We've been taught that it's crazy to trust our intuitive sense. We've been taught that it's a little weird, it's a little out there, it's a little woo-woo. Of course, we're like, I got all these goosebumps, like, but that doesn't mean anything. This doesn't make logical sense. Sometimes the things of this universe don't make logical sense. If you think of the ecosystem that is taking place around our globe right now, and you think about how many variables are playing into every situation, there is no way our puny, egoic, logical minds can wrap around how many things need to be orchestrated and in what way. And so for us to think that we have the ability to understand it all and make a decision from that place, like, that's kind of crazy, actually. There is so much vastness and unknown that we cannot comprehend. So for us to think that we can make a decision purely based on our logical minds, that's crazy. This is normal. So what is normal? Normal is going, my body is telling me something. We've got a little bit of a different edition of a mini bang today. I would love to share with you some life updates, what's happening in my world, but more specifically through the lens of how the universe has made room for manifestations to come in to my life. It has been, I keep using these three words, that it's been wild, bananas, and magic. And then I think about what's happening and how it's unfolding, and I chuckle and smile and shake my head like in awe, kind of dumbfounded. This morning, gosh, synchronicities just keep happening, and I feel like they're happening faster than oh yeah, there's something there. Whew. They're happening faster than I can grasp. It's just like things are, and some of them are small, but some of them are ginormous, and they're coming at me so quick right now that I'm like, this is definitely not anything I'm controlling or manipulating or searching for. Things are coming at me in a really divinely orchestrated way, and it's kind of, yeah, it's bananas. I just said it again. So I'd like to share with you how this is happening, or at least my perception of how it's happening. As I'm sharing how I've been walking my path, I want you to be really clear. My intention is not to give you a formulaic way to do the same thing or to apply the formula to your life. I want you to, and I'll do my best to help in this, to extract the principles from what I'm sharing so that you can apply those principles in a way to you, in a way that you're wired to your life, so that you can make room for your dream life to unfold. I don't even think we have to, I think it's so adverse to what we've been taught that we need to make life happen and we need to work really hard. Don't get me wrong, I am working hard, but it's from a very different place. It's in a very different way. It is an unfolding of what's already in me, rather than me trying to go out and grasp at something and create something. So when I say I want you to extract the principles to help you make room, it's literally for you to open up and make room for what's already in you to come forth. So today is about making room for that and how you can get in alignment, more and more in alignment, so that you can make room for your absolute dream life to start coming forth. Okay. I don't even know what I just said. I feel like I was just riffing, flowing for you in that. Now, when I go back to 3-4 years ago and I started this inner work, I was coming across a lot of work around manifestation. Gabby Berenstein, To Be Magnetic, Abraham Hicks, like a lot of different resources around how to manifest your life. And transparently, I don't know that I would say I was frustrated, but I was approaching that work like you would a genie in a bottle to some degree. I was approaching it like, I really want my life to be what I want it to be. If I do these things, can I just rub it the right way? Get what I want? It's the question. And that didn't work for me. Surprise, surprise. Like I I learned things. I learned things in my mind, but you can't logic your way to this. And I do think that there's an element of manifesting your dream life that is individualized, because we're not all exactly the same. We're not coded the same. We're not wired the same. We're not genetically the same. So how we get to that path is going to be unique. As a little aside, I do want to note, me and Maggie Hillpish, I did an episode with her, are going to be running an event at the end of September. She's going to be bringing in her human design aspect, which will help you tap into how you're wired. And I'm going to bring in this divine feminine intuitive side, and how to authoritatively, in that union of masculine and feminine, with how you're wired in human design or gene keys, different things like that, how to specifically start stepping into that. So that's an aside, but that's going to be at the end of September. I'm going to also have a link in the show notes if you want to get on the wait list. We don't have the date and time picked yet, but we're in the works on that. I'm super excited. We see the need for that, and that's part of why I'm doing this mini bang. Okay, riff. Here I go. So what's happening in my life? So I'm going to use these things that are happening in my life to reflect on the principles that I want you to extract. So one of the big manifestations I have is this trip to Scotland, and I'm going to try to keep this short. You can go back and listen to the episode with Kristen Rowell last winter. She's a former trial attorney turned nutrition, fitness, energetics coach. I thought we were going to be talking about fitness and nutrition. We ended up spending almost the whole episode talking about how to align with your soul's purpose, feminine energy, Mary Magdalene, things that I was like blown away by. During that episode, she was the third person probably that week or in just like a very short period of time that had brought up Mary Magdalene. And at that point knew nothing of her except what the church had taught me, which was incorrect information or incomplete information in my opinion. And so she mentions that she's going on this trip to Scotland, which is to reignite Christ consciousness and remember Mary Magdalene. And she said, to be honest, Jen, I don't really know what we're doing, but I felt compelled to go. And as she's telling me about this, I'm getting just waves of goosebumps, not just like a little bit on my forearm, waves of goosebumps up and down my body over and over. And I'm like, that sounds amazing. I feel like I'm supposed to go on that trip. But like, where's my invitation? And I don't really know Kristen at this point, but I'm like kind of inviting myself on this trip with her. But also, I'm like, no, I can't go on that trip. I already have another one planned in October, a work thing that I'm doing. At this point, I had decided that I wasn't going to take on another formal position in my work, and that I was going to be venturing out into this entrepreneurial world. Again, on my own. And so I'm like, I can't go. I'm not going to go to Scotland. So I let the idea go. I just was like, now is not the time. It doesn't make logical sense, Jen. Now is not the time. But it kept coming back to me. And so I was like, okay, let me just go see what the cost is. So I go online and I look at the cost, and then I'm like, thinking about it, but then I see that it's sold out. So I'm like, okay, could I spend the money? Yes, but also it's sold out. Thank goodness. I don't have to make this tough decision. So I let the idea go again, and it continues to come up to me. And part of why I think it kept coming up to me is because I have been so attuned to my body and understanding that our bodies are like antennas. When there are things that are dangerous for us, when there's intuitive hits coming through, our bodies are divinely designed to give us indicators of which way to go, which way not to go. And I talk about that on a lot of these episodes, how to actually start to tune into that. Some of us don't recognize when we need to take a drink of water because we're so not attuned to our body. I've been there. I've worked back to back meetings all day long and like not gone pee, and not realized that it's been 9 hours, That's how detached we can get from even the basic fundamental needs of our body, let alone tuning into our intuitive sense. And then I think the third part of that is trusting it. because we've been taught that it's crazy to trust that. We've been taught that it's a little weird, it's a little out there, it's a little woo-woo. We've been shamed for it. We've been made fun of for it. So, of course, we're like, I got all these goosebumps, like, but that doesn't mean anything. This doesn't make logical sense. That is our knee-jerk reaction, I think, is to go back to, well, does it make sense? Sometimes the things of this universe don't make logical sense. Oftentimes, I think they don't make logical sense. Because if you think of the ecosystem that is taking place around our globe right now, and you think about how many variables are playing into every situation, there is no way our puny, egoic, logical minds can wrap around how many things need to be orchestrated and in what way. And so for us to think that we have the ability to understand it all and make a decision from that place that's kind of wild. Like, that's kind of crazy, actually. How could I possibly know all of the variables that are being divinely orchestrated? How could I know the creatures that are at the depths of the ocean, that they're still being discovered? There is so much vastness and unknown that we cannot comprehend. So for us to think that we can make a decision purely based on our logical minds, that's crazy. Let's hashtag normalize that. That's crazy. This is normal. So what is normal? Normal is going, my body is telling me something. My body is telling me something, so I'm going to pay attention to that. So I couldn't let it go, I think, in part because I was remembering that embodied experience I was having as I was just hearing about a trip, knowing nothing about Mary Magdalene or the trip, or like, why Scotland, other than the fact that I've binged Outlander. I love that so much. So I said I was going to keep this short. I'm doing an awful job. If you're still with me, congratulations. So I reach out to Kristen and I say, keep me posted if you hear of anything. I don't know if I could even go, but I feel like I need to ask you to do that for me. So she says, okay, cool. This is months ago. Now, fast forward to just a few weeks ago, and I had very transparently what felt like a tough conversation on my end from somebody that was just coming to me out of care, out of like letting me know that from the outside world that it looks interesting to people the way that I'm making decisions. And I get it, right? Like, this is a bit of an aside for those of you that know me and that have been with me on this journey or that have worked with me. You know, over the last 10 years, I've worked in a very corporate structure up until recently. And 7 years of that, I was in a leadership position of billion-dollar organizations. And if you followed me closely, if you knew me closely, none of what I'm saying now would be a surprise to you because you heard me talking about masculine, feminine. You saw it in my stories. And some of it probably confused you then too. The reality is the work that I have been doing, the deep inner work that I have been doing has been the better part of 6 years now, 5 or 6 years. And if you could see the buffet of books that I have next to me right now and the podcasts, you would know, and I've used these words, it's been this insatiable desire, not out of a place of lack, but this compulsion to do what I've been doing. So I've been doing that, and from the outside looking in, people are like, whoa, Jen's taken a big left turn. And here's what's happened. And if you listen to some of these podcast episodes, you'll hear this in what I'm saying too. This is nothing negative to say about anybody I worked with or the environment. I am who I am today because I had the opportunity to be there. So I want to be really clear on that. This is not meant from a place of negativity, but I couldn't be this version of me and be in that position. If people are wondering now if I'm off my rocker, can you imagine if I was in that visible leadership position talking about the things I'm talking about? And there's more. There's more ahead, guys. There's more coming. I couldn't be that version of me. It's not even a version. I couldn't express my my most full self. And listen, your expression of your most full self might fit really well in your working environment, or maybe you're able to compartmentalize differently. I am called to something different. I am wired to something different. This is a new season in my life. And what I know that I'm not willing to do anymore is fit inside boxes, because I'm not called to do that. I am called to initiate. I am called to lead by example. I think even less than I am called to corral people and lead them like I have in a working capacity. I am called to live life in a wild way, in part because I think it is coded to ignite something that helps you to live your life in a wild way. Not to do it the way I've done it, but to find your path in your way. And so I need to do that in a big way, and I want to. It feels really good. This feels really in alignment with what I'm called to do. So that's a bit on that. But I had this challenging conversation. It was challenging to me because it caused me to come back to a place of having these moments of doubt, of getting back in that space again, of going, am I crazy? Am I crazy here for taking this risk, for following my intuition? And then I remembered, like, this is the whole point. This is the whole point. The whole point is that we have been indoctrinated to think it's crazy. And it's not crazy. It's the new normal. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful that I walked through that sort of gate. And even though it was a tough conversation, at the end of it, I just kind of was like, universe, can you just work with me here? Like, work with me. Like, I'm here. I'm open. I'm available. I'm believing. I'm believing not from a place of mustered up faith, not from a place of grasping at belief, but because there's not even a because. I just do. I just believe in this. So I'm like, if I believe that what I'm doing is going to unlock this life and do something for the collective, then, like, work with me, universe. because there's people watching now. Like, they're wondering too. So this is like 2 hours later. I missed a step in this story. Let me backpedal a little bit. On the Scotland thing, I had reached out to Kristen. Kristen said, cool, I'll let you know, but this was many months ago. Like 3 weeks ago, she's like, Jen, there's a woman that can't go on the trip. Here's her name. Here's her phone number. Call her. So I'm like, whoa, okay. Again, I don't know if I can go, but I call her and she's like, it's so nice to meet you, Jen. She happens to live in Minneapolis. There's 50 people from all over the world going on this trip. She happens to live in the area, by the way. So she said, yeah, Jen, I don't know why I'm just getting this intuitive hit that I'm not supposed to go on the trip. And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I feel like I'm supposed to go on the trip. Don't know if I can, but she said, well, I'm going to sit with it for a day. I said, I need to crunch some numbers. Let me sit with it for a day, and then we'll come back around to this. So I go crunch some numbers and look at the cost of the trip, and I'm like, can I do it? Yeah. But let me check in with my body. So this is part of what I'm doing right now. So I'll sit with something and I can feel a hell yes. It's usually kind of like butterflies or goosebumps throughout my body. It's an excited, but not fearful, not anxious, not frantic. It's a different kind of feeling. Anyways, I wasn't getting that feeling, and there was like nothingness. And I'm like, no, like I can't, I'm just not going to. Could I? Yes. Am I going to? No. With my situation right now, I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just not going to drop all that money on this trip. But fuck, what is happening? So she reaches out. She said, yeah, I'm for sure not going to go. It's yours if you want it. And I said, I do want to go, but I just don't have the hell yes right now. And to be honest, I'm fully self-employed again, and I'm at this place where I just don't feel like it's responsible for me to invest that kind of money into this trip. So I said, but we should still get together for coffee. We had planned to get together for coffee, so we had this great connection, great communication, and she said, absolutely, would love to do that. Wish you all the best, Jen. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not going on the trip. So I have now, here we're back to this conversation. So I have this challenging conversation. I kind of throw my hands and my heart up to the universe, and I'm like, what's going on? Show up with me here. A couple hours after that, this woman texts me, and she's like, hey, Jen, I'm just sitting here, and this thought may be kind of crazy. It comes to me, though, like, if I paid for X amount of dollars on the trip, it was essentially a quarter of the trip. Would you want to go? Before I got back to her, I was sitting there, and the question came to mind, because I'm like, no, that doesn't feel right. I had in my mind, like, if I could go for 50% of the cost, that would, it's all inclusive. It's like, I got a roommate. I'm like, that's a very doable, feels like a hell yes to me. So I got back to her and I said, I don't want this at all to feel like I'm negotiating with you, because I don't want to take advantage of this situation. If this is a no on your end, I still want to meet you and have coffee. What I can do is 50% of the cost. She got back to me immediately and said, I'm happy to do that. To be honest, I have a lot of FOMO and I still don't know why I can't go, but this feels really right. So in my mind, I'm like, oh my God. But then I'm also like, there's a plane ticket. And I said I wanted to go for 50%, and shit, I've got this expensive plane ticket. I'm just like, universe, show up for me here, will ya? So the plane ticket is $1,600, and I'm like, okay, what's gonna happen here? I'm cleaning out my mail, and there's an old letter in my mail that is from, so I sold my house back in the end of May. So there's a letter from my loan company saying like, hey, we sent you a check and the check hasn't cashed yet. Please get this signed by a notary so we can resend you the check. This was not escrow funds. There was something that was miscalculated in my mortgage balance. So those of you that know real estate know that this wasn't just escrow. I already got that check. So I wasn't expecting anything more. So I look, no, sure as shit, the amount of that check is $1,600. Look, okay. So I'm going to Scotland in a way that feels in alignment with me on this wild trip that is Mary Magdalene Christ consciousness, and also find out that I have ancestral lineage there. There's all of these wild synchronicities that are happening. And that's just one scenario. Now, another one is that I had just put out there that I would like a partner to help me with my social media and my video editing, because as you can imagine, this is getting to be, it's a lot of effort and time and energy. And while I love doing it, if this is going to expand and grow, I cannot be stuck in the weeds on that. I want to focus on bringing forth really great content and getting really great guests on the podcast. So the editing side of it, I would love some help from somebody who's really great at that. And several times in 1 week, there was this different business framework around how I could set that up in a way that I wasn't outputting a lot on the front end, but it was really advantageous for a potential partner to come in on that side. Less than a week later, I had somebody raise their hand that is an amazing human being that's in alignment with the vision of the podcast that is coming in to work on that. So that just showed up, which was just like also wild. There's more happening, and the other things that are happening are really, I've had some really sacred experiences that I'm not ready to share yet. that are just like blowing my mind. So I was reflecting this morning on what's different now for me than was a few years ago when I was really focused on doing the manifestation work. To be clear, in the last few weeks, I have not been focused on doing the manifestation work. I have been focused on being light and love. I have been focused on stripping everything from my world that is not that. I've been focused on setting boundaries to protect what's being birthed in and through me. I've been focused on being courageous as... Whew, I didn't expect to get emotional on this one. God, I should know better. It's not easy to go against the grain. It's not easy to do things that feel a little wild. It's not easy to share about it publicly, and I'm not looking for a pat on the back. I'm not saying that for any reason other than to say, if you're in that situation right now, if you're breaking a pattern in your own life, if you're stepping out of the norm of what your community and your friends are doing, if you're making a decision based on your intuition, whatever it looks like, and it doesn't make logical sense, and everyone around you is telling you it doesn't make sense, all of that was the muck that I was living in. Not that any of it was out of a lack of care from people or a lack of care that I had for myself, but I was still living in, even though I thought I wasn't, and I'm sure I still have residue of this now, I was still living in a portion of fear around what people would think or if this would really quote unquote work. If, and by this I mean living a life that is boldly in alignment with who I am. So it's not easy to do that. It does require like faith on the front end or a willingness to take a risk. I figure like the worst that's going to happen is going to fall on my face and learn that I was an idiot and I should just go back to functioning in my mind. But what's happening is the opposite of that. My life is becoming more rich and more full. The universe is providing for me in ways that I've never experienced before. I have more joy and gratitude. The depth of the well of that just continues to deepen. I feel more integrated with divine and with source than I ever have. And I have a sense, that all of this is going to continue to expand. How can it not expand? That is our nature. Our nature is growth, evolution, and expansion. That is our nature. When we're in alignment with our nature, that's a universal law. It just will happen. It's when we're out of alignment that it doesn't happen. So I'm reflecting on, well, how am I doing that? And this comes back to the event that Maggie and I are going to be doing. I needed to start making decisions. First of all, not just the decisions themselves, but the way that I make decisions needed to be in alignment with how my body is wired and how I'm coded to be. And I do believe in human design and gene keys and some of these other aspects. And it was one of my best friends that shared human design with me probably 5 years ago. And that's what first led me down the path of diving deeper into the feminine masculine, was because it was lighting me up. So I'm a generator, and generators should make decisions in a couple of ways. One, you follow where your energy is. Sometimes it brings you to things that don't feel quote unquote good, like shadow work. But if there's energy and compulsion moving you in a direction, you follow that. Often for me, it does feel really good. Even the painful things feel good because it's cathartic, right? It's cleansing, it's healing. So for me, I'm a generator, so I follow what lights me up. I follow my joy. I follow my energy. I'm also a sacral decision maker, which is my gut, and have learned as I've been diving into this Gene Keys class with Dan and Annabelle. I'll share a link to them too if you want to work with them. They're fucking amazing. Pardon my French. Or not, whatever. Dan said to me at one point, he's like, Jen, you are all intuition. Your being you are like a hound on a scent. And I've actually used that phrase to myself before. That's what it feels like to me. So for me, and that's not necessarily for you, this is what I was inferring earlier. For me, as I've gotten clear on how I should make those decisions, not what the decisions are, but how I make them, the decision making has become so much easier in a sense. The part that is difficult is having the courage to make the decision. Launching this podcast was a struggle. You can go back, I think it's like episode 3. I talked about walking through fear. This thing is just flowering. It's like the podcast is leading to all of these other things that are flowering. And who knows, maybe this won't be forever. Maybe this is leading, I don't know. Maybe this will evolve or turn into something else. But for right now, this is what it is. So that's thing number 1 is like understanding how you're wired, how you're coded to be, how you should make decisions, because your way of doing them is going to be different than mine. I do think there's an element of intuition for all of us that's very important to tap into. That's kind of like Mary Magdalene stuff. It's understanding that our bodies are divine, that we have divine answers within us. So I think that's a little bit of a caveat on that. But so how to make the decision, and then it's having the courage to make the decision and follow through on those things that are really difficult to do. My last mini bang, I talk about understanding your values, but really what that was about was like saying no to the things that are out of alignment. And that is heartbreaking sometimes because it's closing chapters. It's changing relationships. It's really flipping hard sometimes to let go of things that we're really attached to. But that is the making room. If I am mired in things, and some of them may be good things, but I'm like in the thick of a bunch of stuff that isn't fully in alignment for me, I have no room for anything to come in, much less magnetize it. That's the other thing I would say that and I think this is part of my generator energy, a lot of the feedback I get is that my energy is contagious, and whether people are agreeing or not with what I have to say or the decisions that I'm making, there is no denying that like what's coming from me is, I don't think people have the words for it, nor do I. And I believe that can come from all of us. It may look a very different way, but that when we're vibrating in that frequency, when we're aligned, when we are full of purpose and passion and joy and pleasure, it is a perspective that we see the world through and that the universe responds to in kind. So because I've been focused on being love, being light, and stripping away as much as I can, transmuting, healing the things in me that are not that, I shouldn't be surprised that I'm attracting the same in. I had that thought this morning. I was like, when will you stop being surprised, Jen? Like, when will you stop being surprised by the synchronicities that are coming at you more quickly than you can handle? I don't know. I don't know if I should just be like, well, this is the new normal. Don't be surprised. But it always feels like such a gift to me. I hope you know that all of this that I'm sharing is meant to be as an encouragement to you, an expansion of what's possible, an illumination of how you might begin to follow your own intuitive hits on the next steps to take. To be clear, what I'm experiencing now, I know isn't everything. This isn't the pinnacle of life. I know that. I know it's not the center of the universe. I also do know that it has taken me time to get to this place, and it it has been deep work that has allowed me to make room for some of this stuff coming in. And the deep work has also been a joy. I struggle sometimes with how to articulate that, because the last thing I want to do is scare people away from going inward or from walking through their own dark part of the journey, dark night of the soul. Last week's episode, we talked about the hero's journey, and in everyone's journey, if we want to get to quote unquote the pinnacle of life, or the elixir that you go on, think of Lord of the Rings, think of these big adventures, it always requires going through this dark period, but it's part of the adventure. It's part of getting there. And I'm finding that there's this peculiar sort of pleasure in pain, which I'm sure BDSM people are like, duh. But there is this like ache. There's this, when you experience that, the achiness of it, you also start to understand like the depth of love. And I don't know any other words. If you've been through it, you know what I'm talking about, I think. So don't let that scare you off if you're standing kind of at an abyss right now, or if you're in the midst of like knowing that your next step is to have a difficult conversation or to work through forgiveness of yourself or for others. If you're in a difficult spot, all of that is a part of the process of clearing, of healing, of making way for your most beautiful life to unfold. Oh, I don't know you, but I love you. I feel a connection to you, my listeners. Like physically, I feel it. I feel like a thread that goes between me and you, and I feel a sense of love for you and for wherever you're at in your journey. So, thank you, as always, for tuning in and for hanging on for this long life update from Jen. I hope it's encouraging to you. Stay tuned on the whole shebang. We have some really powerful transmissions coming forward, and I'm using the word transmission because it feels like messages that are not just from smart people. They are smart people, but the words and the energy behind them have power, and I'm experiencing that when I'm in them. The episode coming out this Thursday with Katie Mackin, she's an astrologer, breathwork specialist, and she effectively like blew my camera out. I don't even know how to tell you. It hasn't happened before. It hasn't happened since. The camera like overheated. It's never happened. I don't know why. And she said, for what it's worth, this is not uncommon, because when she channels, she doesn't call herself a channel, but when she's speaking from an inspired place, she literally heats up. So there's some really powerful things that on this week's episode with Katie Mackin. I have Nadine coming on. She is a tantric sex coach. I have Annabelle Viscara, who is a feminine embodiment womb shaman, and just this amazing, they're all amazing. They're just amazing humans that I also keep feeling the need, which is just probably my own insecurity and ego that I need to say this. They're like just these incredibly talented, smart humans. Many, the ones I just spoke of, women, many of them that have had my journey or a similar story of being in these positions of power and leadership and authority and feeling really led without explanation into the feminine, uncovering their intuitive gifts, and then birthing them into the world in these powerful, like transformational ways. So that's all coming up. I have another man who's going to be coming on that's a relationship coach that is just a really great human being. So lots of good things that are coming up. This is also a part of a lot of that has been magnetized to me. Some of it I've felt compelled to seek out, and some of it is coming to me, and the opportunities and the connections feel really divine. So I hope that this is inspiring you. The last thing that I want to say is that as I'm on this path, this is not going to be like the way that I make money, the podcast. Typically, you don't make a ton of money podcasting. It becomes a vehicle for other things. But I would like to just throw this invitation to you. If you haven't already, it would help tremendously if you would do a few things. Whether or not you want to watch these podcasts on YouTube, if you go to YouTube and subscribe, that would really help. If you follow the podcast on Apple and or Spotify, and then leaving a review on either Apple or Spotify or both if you feel called, helps a ton. And that helps push the content out to the people that are needing and interested in the content. And as that continues to grow, it gives me legitimacy to invite different guests on the podcast. And you can see how the momentum begets momentum and creates other opportunities. And also, eventually, as this becomes the thing, it enables me to be able to just really focus my heart, energy, mind, intention on the content that I'm bringing forward. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. If you feel like good about doing that and you haven't done it yet, that would be such a gift to me. Okay. I feel complete. All right, loves. Have a banging day.